The room went quiet before anyone said a word. Not the polite kind of quiet, the kind that feels like something just broke. Mr. Halverson stopped mid-sentence, one hand still raised like he was about to object, but he didn't. He just stared at the screen, at his email, time-stamped, signed, sent. And for the first time since I met him, he looked unsure. No one moved. No one spoke. Even his lawyer leaned back slowly, like he'd just realized the floor wasn't where he thought it was. I didn't say anything either. I just let the silence do its job. 6 days earlier, the house still smelled like fresh paint and unopened boxes. It sat at the edge of the neighborhood, technically outside it if you followed the survey lines. That mattered. At least, it was supposed to. I was in the driveway, crouched next to a half-assembled patio chair, when I noticed the black SUV roll up. It didn't park immediately. It idled, watching. Then the door opened. 3 people stepped out, 2 men, 1 woman, all wearing that same expression. Polite, smiling, already convinced they were right. The man in front adjusted his blazer like he was about to enter a courtroom instead of a driveway. "Good afternoon," he said. "You must be the new owner." I stood up slowly, brushing dust off my hands. "That's right." He smiled wider. "I'm Richard Halverson, president of the HOA." I glanced past him, toward the edge of my property line. Interesting. I didn't think this property was part of the HOA. There was a pause. Short, measured. Then he chuckled. "Oh, it is," he said. "It just hasn't been formally integrated yet." That was my first clue. He didn't waste time. "We'll need you to sign these," he said, pulling a folder from under his arm. I didn't take it. "What are they?" "Standard HOA agreements. Covenants, restrictions, fee schedules." I nodded slowly. "I'm not part of your HOA." His smile didn't move. "You are now." I let that sit for a second. Then I said, "No, I'm not." The woman behind him shifted slightly, like she'd heard that answer before and didn't like how it usually ended. Mr. Halverson tilted his head. "Your property falls within our expansion zone. It was always intended to be incorporated." "Intended?" I repeated. "Yes." "But not legally done?" Another pause. Slightly longer this time. "We're finalizing that process," he said. I nodded again. "Then come back when it's finalized." That's when the tone changed. Just a little. "You don't seem to understand," he said, voice tightening. "There are compliance expectations here." "And you don't seem to understand," I said calmly, "that I'm not under them." His jaw flexed. Then he handed me the folder anyway. "Review it," he said. "You'll want to cooperate." I didn't take it. He held it there for another second, then pulled it back. That was escalation 1. The letter arrived the next morning, certified. Inside was a notice of violation, $2,500, for non-compliance with HOA landscaping standards. I read it twice. Then I walked outside. My violation was a stack of unopened boxes on my porch. I took a photo, then another, from the street, showing the property line marker clearly visible in the frame. That mattered. I checked the county records again that afternoon. Parcel boundaries, zoning maps, HOA filings. There was no overlap, not even close. But there was something interesting. An application, pending, filed 3 weeks ago, by the HOA, requesting expansion, including my lot. Denied. 2 days before I closed on the house. I leaned back slowly. So that's the game. Goal, absorb my property into their HOA. Mechanism, act like it already happened. I filed the letter away, unanswered. They didn't like being ignored. 2 days later, the fines increased, $10,000, this time for unauthorized exterior modifications. I hadn't modified anything, but attached to the notice were photos of my house, taken from the street, zoomed in, annotated. They'd circled my satellite dish, called it a violation. I zoomed into the image. Metadata was still intact. Timestamp? 7:12 a.m. Date? Yesterday. I wasn't home at 7:12, which meant they'd been there early, documenting, building a case. I checked my security cameras. There it was. Black SUV. Same one. Parked across the street. Halverson stepping out, holding a tablet, taking photos like he was collecting evidence. I saved the footage, backed it up. Then I checked something else. The angle. Where he stood to take the photo. Technically, it wasn't public property. He'd stepped 2 feet onto my land. Small detail, but useful. They escalated faster after that. A lien notice, $25,000, filed pending compliance. That got my attention. Not emotionally, structurally. A lien requires legal standing, which they didn't have. Unless... I pulled the county database again and found it. A provisional filing. Not approved, but submitted. They were building a paper trail, trying to create legitimacy through volume. If enough documents exist, people assume authority. I requested copies of everything they'd filed. Then I noticed something odd. One document had a signature from the previous owner, agreeing to HOA inclusion, dated 2 months ago. I frowned. That didn't line up. The sale closed 3 weeks ago, which meant that document shouldn't exist, unless it was signed before the sale, or it wasn't real. I made a note. They showed up in person again, this time with a contractor. "We'll be removing the non-compliant structures," Halverson said casually, gesturing toward my fence. "You mean my fence? It violates HOA guidelines. You don't have authority here." He smiled. "We will." I looked at the contractor. He looked back at me, uncomfortable. "Do you have a court order?" I asked. Halverson didn't answer. That told me everything. I turned to the contractor. "If you touch that fence," I said calmly, "you'll be trespassing." He hesitated, then stepped back. Halverson's smile tightened. "This doesn't end well for you." I nodded. "It already is." That night, I went through everything. Every letter, every photo, every filing. Patterns started to emerge. Timestamps that didn't match. Documents submitted before they were signed. Photos taken from inside my property labeled as public view. Then I found the email, buried in the document request response. Internal HOA communication, forwarded accidentally, from Halverson to his board. Subject line, Parcel 47. I opened it, read it once, then again. "We missed the purchase window. If we can establish compliance violations early, we can pressure the new owner into forced inclusion or sale." I leaned back slowly. There it was. Not enforcement. Strategy. Goal: force me into the HOA or make me sell. But there was more. Attached to that email was the signed agreement from the previous owner, except the file metadata told a different story. Created 4 days ago, modified 2 hours later, signed date 2 months ago. I smiled slightly. That was the twist. They didn't just overreach, they forged. The hearing was scheduled the following morning. Small room, wood paneling, 3 officials at the front. Halverson arrived early, confident, relaxed. He nodded at me like we were about to have a friendly discussion. His lawyer sat beside him, flipping through a thick folder, prepared, or so he thought. When my name was called, I stood, calm, collected. I didn't bring a thick folder, just a tablet. That mattered. They presented first. Violation notices, photos, the signed agreement. Halverson spoke clearly, confidently, like he'd done this before. Then it was my turn. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just connected my tablet to the screen and opened one file. The email. I didn't read it out loud. I let them read it, silently.
Then I tapped once more, bringing up the metadata overlay. Creation date, modification history, timestamp sequence, and finally, the digital signature mismatch. Proof the document was altered after it was supposedly signed. I looked at Halverson. He was already staring at it. That's when his hand stopped moving. Mid-air. The shift was immediate, subtle, but total. His lawyer leaned in, whispering something urgent. One of the officials adjusted his glasses, scrolling back through the file. Another asked a single question. "Mr. Halverson, would you like to explain this?" He didn't answer right away, because there wasn't a good answer. The confidence was gone, replaced with calculation. Then silence, heavy, unavoidable.